So to get a perspective of Malaysia's radio digital present, we'll speak to leaders of the Malaysian radio industry about their digital capabilities, what they can deliver for listeners and advertisers today. So I'd like to invite Seelan Paul, the CEO of Prima Radio Networks, up on stage. Jayaram Nagaraj, head of digital, Astro Radio. Erin Hwang from Star Radio Group, and of course James is up here as well. And moderating this panel session is my colleague Jeff Sandhu. Hello. And as they're coming up, let's play a video of CRM's offerings, which will lead us very nicely to the panel session. So let's watch this video.
In this generation, radio advertising has expanded beyond our FM devices. Now, with our radio apps, not only can you listen to the station live, but also a pre-roll of a sponsored advertisement.
The world is facing a crisis of chronic illness like diabetes. Get concerned. Celebrate World Diabetes Day with Sunway Medical Center, leading the fight.
It's Rachel again. Good morning, Frida Liu.
We don't target just the mobile users, but even those using computers.
Let's go Baskin Robbins vanilla ice cream.
Ooh, I want.
You mean Baskin Robbins?
Baskin Robbins 31. Pretty. And with every touch.
Plus, with the rising demand for videos, our platforms can feature video advertisements.
Sugar Bites. Protect your kids.
Don't have a video to feature? Well, we can help you produce one. Radio stations can now create branded video content to feature products. And with our audience mostly on social media, radio stations can reach out to more people through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Radio, beyond just the audio.
All right, thank you.
Why so far, Dave?
It feels like the chair is too much on one side, so I'm going to join the crowd. Anyways, so the theme, what? Radio is already digital? So I want to ask, right, I'm struggling to think of any other industry throughout the years that has been said that this industry is going to die, and then it still survives, and it's come back again, it's going to die, it still survives. Radio is like a cockroach, basically. So what's the problem here, basically? Why all this talk of saying that radio is going to die? James?
I was hoping for a rest. I think that actually, radio is really weird in that, particularly when you look at the US, a lot of people in the US are very fascinated by all of the new things and things that have lights and that are connected to the internet and everything else, and they actually almost forget about the things that work for advertisers, the things that work for audiences. And when you look at the US, which for right or for wrong, everyone else appears to copy, the US radio market is in a really bad way. No one goes to the US anymore to copy what they're doing, because why would you want to copy a radio industry which is growing smaller every single year? So actually, when you look at how US radio is doing, it's doing really, really badly. When you look at radio across, across Southeast Asia, in Australia, in the UK, in much of Europe, it's a growing industry and it's doing fantastically well. And I think that actually, if only we could get rid of the US entirely, maybe Donald Trump will do that, who knows? But if only we could get rid of the US entirely, radio's image would be so much better.
So let's focus on Malaysia then. The thought is radio is already digital. We've got Media Prima, we've got Star, we've got Astro. What is the digital assets here with the radio group that you are working with?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Seelan was back with us back in the day, and he would tell you that we started off as a digital arm of the company way back when we were known as the microphone department, right? So, but I think very quickly the understanding was that in 2002 we had live streaming, though the live streaming was the size of a 50-cent coin. It was always behind the understanding of I need to reach my audience. The very basis of advertising is delivering your audience to your advertiser. So if the audience happened to be on the internet, or they like consuming video content, or they wanted to prefer to listen to us on an app, we've always invested in those areas where the audience exists. So that's something that we've always had, as just naturally, because as Malaysians, we're a very connected audience. Even before Facebook and Google and all of that, we were a very connected audience, and I think the investments in those areas were helping the radio brand overall.
What about in Star Radio Group?
Okay, over in the Star Media Radio Group, right, we actually started our digital some time ago as well. But recently what we did is we actually captured a lot of visual, give more visual experience to our listeners in that context. Very different from what James shared with us, you know, the traditional way of visuals and all that. We're talking about numerous angles. We invested in a lot of technology to ensure that we are as good as TV news, for example. If you're going to deliver a TV news on air, we wanted to actually share with them certain visual snippets that we got. Example, if today we're talking about there's a massive jam over because of the weather, we want to be able to actually share with them, hey, look at it, this is live now and it's jam up over the highways and all that. And we have been investing in that kind of technology, and we are actually doing that. So it's totally different experience for our audience, and of course a very different experience for our advertisers as well.
And what about the social media scene? Is that something that you also consider as a digital part of radio?
For me personally, I see it as a distribution platform for us, because like James highlighted earlier, the three factors for radio to continue to evolve in future is about content. So we are delivering great content for our consumers, and we see social media as a distribution platform to deliver that content. Whether it's catch-up content or whether it's a visual content, it doesn't matter as long as that, because that particular consumer has basically took an action to basically follow your brand, and you can use that particular platform. For instance, I think overall the whole industry will have millions of people following us on our Facebook, Instagram and such. So that's a ready platform for us to basically deliver content. It could be the same content that we do on radio, but it could also be some additional content. So it's a great opportunity. So technology allows us to do that.
So there's two, I see there are content creators here, and then there's the advertisers as well. So let's focus on the content creators. When it talks about digital radio, is there anything different that they can do on a digital radio that they can't normally do on traditional FM radio?
I think just some of the video that was just recently played that showed a lot of interactivity. That Baskin-Robbins example was a fantastic one, right? And when you would usually be able to hear about Baskin-Robbins, being able to see and engage with those ad units are very important. But enabling that technology is a great benefit for you pointed this side as advertisers. So it's great for the advertising guys. But what that same technology allows us to do is to, when there's no inventory available online, when there's no ads online, we have the ability to put in a song. So, on air, if you tuned into the radio on air, your experience would be that you have to hear the ads. But if you were consuming it online or on your mobile device, if there was no ad online, hey, we'll just play you another song. So when you just specifically look at radio and that function, that's what's different. The other component that's different is, I don't know about you guys, I was a big fan of the radio guys when I was growing up. I used to listen to Seelan Paul when I was a kid, and I thought, this guy is so, I just absolutely love Seelan Paul.
Very, very old. Same age actually.
Yeah.
Grey hair, no hair.
Yeah. So when I heard Seelan Paul, I always wanted to say, what do these guys look like? You hear Jeff Sandhu, you said, wow, you want to look what it looks like. I always had that curiosity of what it looked like in the studio. But that curiosity still exists, though now it's not as appreciated as it was before. Being able to bring that visual element to radio for the advertisers and for the content creators, that's been phenomenal. Our biggest expansion in the last 6 months have been hiring videographers, digital talent, people that don't even go on air but are tied or associated to the radio brand. For the advertiser, I'll give you a great example. Nippon Paint is a client, a great client, but if you all remember watching Bulutiru Tama when you're growing up, Nippon sponsors the weather side. Every time, right? And you think paint, it's weather, right? Because they are an incredibly visual advertiser. They want people to see the paint. Makeup brands obviously want people to see the makeup. And the visual aspect that you can't really put together on radio, you can actually do everything you can on the radio digital side, where you combine the talent, you combine the content with that advertiser, and you have a variety of touch points, be it ground, be it digital, be it on air, that all loop back together. And some of the best campaigns we've ever run are the convergent campaigns, not just a 30-second spot 25 times a week, but far more convergent than that. And I think if you see all the trend is across all the entire side.
If I may add, a few weeks ago, for Hari Sukanagara, we actually did an interview with YBKJ. So traditionally, if radio does an interview, a minister sits in the studio, talks about the campaign and such. But I think radio nowadays, and as content creators, it gives us a bigger opportunity, especially with technology, to basically think beyond that. So what we did was we did an outside broadcast. We took him up to the rooftop. We already had a few challenges ready for him to do, which is broadcasted live on Facebook. And we still did the audio interview, which of course those who were driving were listening to the content, but those who are on Facebook were actually watching him doing the interview. And after the interview, when the songs are being played, we continue with, previously we promoted hashtag Tanya KJ. So there were already questions. So in between the songs, he was answering Tanya KJ on Facebook Live. And on top of that, we did the gimmicks, when we made him do some stunts and such. We had some really good video content. So it made the whole interview very deep, very immersed, and engages our consumer audience on multiple touch points. And I think that's an opportunity for content creators to continue to push themselves. So whenever my team comes up with an idea, my question would be, think more. How can we push this more? And that's an opportunity for radio.
Erin, any examples from Stan?
This year we took a very big bold move to launch something very big online combining radio. It's actually a collaborations in Understar Media Group, what we call Anugerah Bihang Online, APO. Anugerah Bihang Online, in English means Online Choice of Award. What we actually did is we actually asked people to vote for their choice of different categories, range up to 80 categories, from songs to actress to actor to sportsman to blogger. What we did is on radio, on Surya, we actually asked people to, hey, you know, we have this Anugerah Bihang Online and all that, and we also got our sister company M-Style to join us because they are the online news portal, entertainment portal within the group, and we asked people to vote 100% online. You see, unlike traditionally, we'll ask people to actually vote whether they submit their submissions by a newspaper, they submit the chorus and vote and all that. It's 100% online, and that's how we combine that particular digital and radio together. At the same time, still serving the market in terms of the content that they want. You know, who's your favorite artist? You know, who is your favorite writer? You know, who's the best songs and groups? And yet, that's what happened. You know, and this year was our very first year, and we actually garnered about more than 80,000 votes in a single category. So we are talking about 80 categories here, you see. So definitely radio, digital, activation at the same time, it's all integration. We're all talking about integration now.
James, question for you. It seems like there's a lot of talk about, you know, radio needs to incorporate the visual element. I'm thinking here is like, one is I can't use the excuse that my face is now made for radio because it's going to be visual. The other thing is that don't we then just become a TV station then? Because we've seen examples that you showed, and it now feels like this is just TV because it's still content at the end of the day. I can switch off the visual, and it becomes radio. When I turn on the visual, it becomes TV.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is clear convergence in between what's going on in TV and what's going on in radio. If you look at a typical TV news channel, and you close your eyes, it turns into a radio news channel in many cases. But I also think that actually radio's main strength is that shared experience, that human connection. And if we forget that, if we forget what makes radio so much more loved than television, as you saw from the slides earlier, so much more loved than newspapers. If we focus on what makes radio great, it is that human connection, and making sure that we don't ruin that with TV cameras, is really important. So last week I was in New Zealand, and in New Zealand their breakfast show on TV3, one of their big TV channels, is in a TV studio, but it's a radio show. It's a radio show with a guy called Paul Henry. It goes out on a national radio station as well, where it works really well, because at breakfast we're typically not watching the breakfast TV, we're listening to it as we go around the house anyway. So actually that works in a fantastic way, and it's a great way of allowing the best of those two media to actually work, of what television can offer and of what radio can offer. And I think actually what you get when you can combine online and on air is really powerful, because combining the emotion and the immediacy of radio with the detail, with the data capture, with all of the visuals that you get online. One example that I might add is I was doing some work with a hotel company, a national hotel company in the UK. And they were really keen to promote the fact that they had hotels everywhere. So wherever you wanted to go, there was probably going to be a hotel near you. So what we ended up doing is we built a portion of the radio station website called Rock Pilgrimages, and this was lots of interesting places in the UK that you could go which had something to do with the music that we played on the air. So Abbey Road Studios, for example, in London, or the studios that Muse used to record in Cornwall, and so on and so forth. And we then chucked the database of all of their hotels into the system as well, so that if you wanted to visit where the Smiths recorded their first album, then you could do that, and you could also book a hotel right next to it, because there would be a hotel close by. And I think that's the real benefit that you can do if you have radio working alongside a brand, is that you can really tailor what you're doing online to what that brand wants to achieve, and then use the mass media, the radio station, to push people towards that feature online.
Well, we've seen the stat that 97% of Malaysians listen to radio.
97.2.
97.2. So, how has the digital assets, or the digital transformation in your radio groups, that has sort of helped you grow more audience? Or is this something of we're trying out, because 97% of Malaysians already listen to radio? How much more can you grow, right? 97.2. Sorry, James. But yeah, so how much more can you grow, or is digital radio something that will happen, and we're building the blocks now itself?
I strongly believe that we have a very high reach in the country because of that convergence. Not just purely traditional radio listening. I think because of the exposure on the digital platform, social media, our YouTube channels, all our activations, they have a very strong emotional connection with us. Hence, the reach of radio has now extended. I think a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, my colleagues in the industry can correct us, I think we were at only around 92%. So at that time, smartphones penetration also was not so high. So I think the technology allows us to reach more people. Imagine maybe 8 years ago, when you step out from your car and you want to take a commuter, you don't have radio with you. But now with the smartphone, you just continue the journey from your car to your smartphone, and you go to the office, you continue your journey again via Office desktop. So the reach is there. It will, I think reaching 97 is fantastic. I don't know whether we would ever be able to hit that 100, but I think that itself is it's a good example on how strong radio is.
I would aim for 102%. 102%.
2% margin.
Yeah.
Is there anything about like the digital audience, the audience who listen to digital radio that is unique or attractive to advertisers per se? Like, you know, for advertisers, when you go up to them, what's attractive about people listening to digital radio from an advertiser point of view?
I mean, if I may, just to expand on that, we try and look at how we can innovate for our advertisers, especially in the digital space. And it's a great time because we're all doing our 5-year planning now and next year budgets. I'm sure you all are stuck in that too. But when we look forward, we try and look at the things that are not going to change. A great example is WeBe, this new telco that's out. Unlimited data, one plan. Just everyone that signs up with WeBe gets unlimited data. That reduces one of the biggest barriers to consume radio on mobile devices, besides battery life, which I hope someone will sort out soon. But even if you look at Maxis today, their biggest plans are about 20 gigs. A lot of these guys are throwing in the amount of data. So when we look to the future and we try and see what we can innovate in, we try and innovate in some of the key areas that we know are not going to change. Are people going to be more and more connected? I'm sure of it. I guess we have 100% of the audience here using Facebook, so you're most likely on it right now. You know, there's a lot of us that Twitter's probably is growing in some mediums or not. So we look at all these areas that are not going to change. We know that this is upward trajectory, and we try and innovate around that. I mean, there's a few things you could look at, like how would radio have a functional role in augmented reality, that whole Pokemon Go phase. That's what the advertisers are asking for now. How would radio have a role in 360 content? The VR content. And that's also something that we are investing in now, and that's because there's demands on two ends, right? And I like the way you split it, right? Advertisers and the content creators. The content creators are keen to do that. The digital industry, excluding radio from it, the YouTubers and all of that, are getting into that. The advertisers want that. So for us, the job, I think for all of us in the industry, is I think there's a very big importance to continue to grow the radio pie. Or the size of the radio pie in the 8X for the advertisers, but also to put in a lot of innovation. Will the lines be blurred one day? Is that really still a radio campaign? We've started to do things now called pure digital campaigns in Astro Radio. Pure digital campaigns are advertisers talking to us saying, I don't want the FM part, I want the online part, I want the social part. I think if you look at worldwide as a trend, and correct me if I'm wrong, but worldwide as a trend, radio stations seem to have incredibly engaging social platforms. One of the most social engaging platforms in Australia are the Astro Network and ARN. Oh, now more ARN than Astro, I guess. Malaysia, it's the radio brands. If you look at, I believe in the UK and the US, not so much the US, I think the UK, radio brands seem to be big on social. So we obviously know something that a lot of the consumer brands don't. And advertisers are trying to tap into that. I think with what Seelan mentioned with KJ, that's exactly what I think an advertiser or a marketer would want to get involved in. Not just I heard it in my car this morning, but I really liked that interview and I watched it on Facebook. Or I was in the bus and I was watching it live on my phone. You've got the MRT coming up at the end of this year. I'm assuming, rightfully, hopefully, that a lot of people will start moving out of their cars and into these mass transit platforms. The role of shifting the consumer behavior in our favor is even more important. I don't want them just flicking through the newsfeed the entire day, but I do want them consuming that. And the catch-up content, podcast content, is super important as well. So from an advertiser point of view, looking at those things that are not going to change, we have to figure out how we can get them involved in that. And podcasts, I love the podcast. I think the Serial mention was great. I was a huge fan of Serial. I kept thinking when I was listening to that podcast, like, why isn't there not more than a few advertisers on it? I think they had one or two, but 100 million reaches.
They were not making money actually.
Yeah,
for the first season, they struggled. They then had to look for people to invest for the second season to start off. Like,
Yeah.
we're not making money.
And that's the sad part, right? But and that's where I think for us, we're commercial radio operators. We have a responsibility to do it by the license, but we have a responsibility to do right by shareholders. You know? So you have to look at what's that changing consumer pattern and how they can get involved in it.
So then when you talk to advertisers, then is it all about, trying to craft that story so that you can deliver that story, whether or not it goes onto FM, because now you have your digital assets and all. Do you look at it that way, or do you still try to force, because FM is probably still the larger share within the organization itself?
I mean, if you look at the numbers, then you cannot ignore FM at the moment. But ultimately, I think we need to look at the brief from the client. And for me, it's always about the idea first. And then we'll figure out how do we want to make that idea travel. Ideally, you need FM, mainly because that's where the connection starts with the listeners. Bigger share play. They have an emotional connection with the personalities, not just the music. So how then we can use the talent, translate the storytelling from traditional radio, then go into digital. And it's not just about digital play when it comes to radio, it's about activation and a lot more other engagement that we can actually do.
It seems to be the mantra for advertisers, right? Activation, activation, activation. That's what they want. So how are you helping them to do this with your digital assets now? Is it easier now, or is it?
Well, we use a lot of. We're trying to look at how we can use data now more than ever to try and drive that.
When you say data, you're talking about profiles of individuals, what they like, what they don't like.
Yeah, yeah. It's this really new world of data management platforms, and a really technical part of it. But if you look at any radio business worth their salt on earth, their research division is what really is the heart and soul of that. I mean, that's what tells you what songs to play, tells you what talent to hire, what talent to fire, all of that. And so that part is familiar to us as radio people. When you look at data analytics and big data, I initially thought it would be difficult for the organization to look at that, but when these guys got into it, they're like, oh, it's very straightforward. We try to look at data on how we can drive activation now. Really good example that's fairly recent that we did was we had a huge concert in Kuching. We have a radio studio in Kuching. We had 20,000 people show up for this concert, but before the concert, a lot of the marketing that we did, besides of course using our FM stations and all that, is that we looked at a lot of geographical data that was coming out of Kuching. It's actually very easy to slice on a map because it's over there. And we marketed that event to that location. So when we've done campaigns with clients that are multiple city campaigns, our radio licenses are national based. That's why you'll never hear anyone on Hits FM turn on the mic and say, what a beautiful day is it outside. So because we're national based, when we try and do our marketing, we're trying to drive people to Penang, for example. We've got local insertion units that help us with that. On air, we obviously talk about the fact that Penang. But when we go on digital, especially on radio digital, we have the ability of talking to our audiences who are listening in Penang on mobile or web and telling them, hey, this afternoon at 2 o'clock, please come. That would have been a wasted impression if I told someone in Johor or someone in Singapore or Australia. So we're carving that data out now and be able to feed back. So we can say, oh, we reached in this campaign telling people to go to Penang, we've reached 35,000 people. So we're like, okay, 35,000 people know about it, for sure. So then we look at social. Now Facebook is a fantastic tool to use, even for a radio business, because you can make sure that these posts are only seen by certain geographic locations, and we use that as well. So I think it boils down to what Seelan just said, is that convergence. So you've got one layer on that, one layer on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just, add a note of caution here. If you ask Facebook, you want to advertise to everybody between 12 and 18 in the UK, then you get a figure which is 3 million more than the amount of 12 to 18 people who live in the UK. There are lots and lots and lots of weird bits of data out there, and of course it's because people have their own account where mum and dad watches them, and then their account where they actually share stuff. You know, so you just have to be careful, and you have to be careful when you're looking at online stats of comparing those with stats for radio and for TV and for other things. I think one of the real benefits that radio has is that our statistics are correct, and our statistics are put together by a company that doesn't actually care about whether or not radio is doing well or not. You know, our statistics are completely independent, whether that's here in Malaysia, whether that's in Australia, the UK, and so on and so forth. And I think that's an incredible strength. And if you compare that to the hits figure that you see on the bottom of a YouTube video, or the information that you see on Facebook or on Twitter, those are all self-reporting. They are all by and large wrong to quite a large and quite scary amount. And I just think we have to be a little bit careful on that. But I think we are all getting better as an industry in getting better at using data, getting better at targeting our audience. We shouldn't forget that actually radio is an incredibly well-targeted media anyway. We have specific channels out there for specific demographics, for specific languages, you know, and so on and so forth, and for local areas as well. We do a fantastic job of targeting people already. You know, adding online into the mix is even better for us, but we shouldn't forget about the real strengths that broadcast radio has.
Any examples from Star Radio, Star Media Group, in terms of how you're using data to cater to the market that you hit? And because radio, the FM radio is very hard to actually properly track what time exactly you listen, who listens, what they do. But when it's a digital world, which the advertisers love, and partly the reason why they're talking about radio is hard, it's gonna die, is because we can't seem to provide that data. But now that radio is moving into the digital world, we have that ability to compete with other sort of media that it's on digital itself. What about the Star Media Radio Group?
I think for us, in terms of digital data, right, it was very useful because for the past 2 years, again, I mentioned we actually invest quite a bit of investment into our digital platforms. That's because we know it's very important, apart from having 2 surveys a year, we need to know where exactly is our listeners are and what's that trend are. Because we know radio is now multi-platform. We want to know where are they, we want to know who are there, and that's how we are using our digital platform, and that's how we are using digital platform to engage them in terms of our content. I've said it again, to us, we are not longer just in a radio business. We said it again and again, I think Seelan will probably agree with me as well. We've been talking about, it's all about content. It's about creating what's the content that is relevant to the market that we wanted, because we already created a very relevant content, and that's how we reached 97%, 97.2% to be exact, in terms of the market 10 plus above in Malaysia, because we are very successful in terms of creating content for specific markets, specific genres, specific location. And with digital data that we are having right now, and every day each one of us is actually investing a lot more to find out a lot more and help us and advertisers to find out who are these people and what's their lifestyle are. And this is just actually helping us in terms of monetizing our content. So that is what we are actually doing at the moment. So like I said, it's always been content.
So let's talk about personalization, because that seems to be the reason why we are going digital, is the ability to, like you mentioned, if you're in Penang, that personalization. If I'm in Penang and I listen to something, it talks to me, and if I'm in KL, it talks to me as well. That personalization is key. Can you explain what's going on at the moment that is personal radio in that sense, within Media Prima, Star Radio, and also within Astro itself? Like, is there any personalization of the radio world?
I mean, if we look at the examples that James gave earlier with Absolute Capital, I think their personalization has already gone to the next level. To be honest, I don't think so we are as personalized as they are, but that's an opportunity that we can actually look at. But we are sort of like personalized, like how we said about a certain demographic that we are speaking. but it's still not very individual based. It's still very group or mass based. Hopefully that's something that we can look at in the future. But as for Media Prima itself, we are looking at working with Spotify as our partner. So we're trying to build a personalized sort of like environment in that particular playground and still bring them back to our brand. So that's the furthest I would say when we do content personalization per se.
Anything within the Star Media Radio Group?
We actually started this personalized content for a specific group many years ago. You know, we started off non-digital, to be very frank with you. We started to provide English content to KL Monorail. I don't know whether you guys actually remember that. Okay, that to me is a way to provide content. You know, whether during that period of time, digital may not be the forefront during that time. Is the monorail, is the public transportations are the forefront. So we created that kind of opportunity for ourselves and our advertisers as well to go into different platforms and provide the content. To me, like Seelan said, you know, it's definitely something that we are looking at as an industry, and for SMRG, we are actually looking at it. We have done it many years ago in a different platform, and we are actually going into very personalized content, to be very fair with you, something to watch out, and it's definitely be very fruitful for advertisers and to us as well to engage our audience even more.
James, March 2005 was when you launched the first app, a radio app on a phone. I won't even call it a smartphone. It was a Sony Ericsson, it was a P900 or something like that, right? Yeah. So iPhone didn't even exist, apps didn't even exist. What was the reason in, you know, very early on to go digital, and what was the discussion like in terms of, and advertisers as well, like, did they buy into the idea of being so new?
We were very lucky in the UK in that if you are a listener to the radio, then you're a listener to the radio regardless of what platform that radio station is on. So if it's on the TV, if it's on online, if it's on an AM or FM radio, you're a listener and you appear in those figures. So for me, I was being really incentivized by how many pairs of ears can I get tuning in to that radio station. And so, you know, very much, you know, my focus was, if it's got a loudspeaker, how can I make the loudspeaker have Virgin Radio on it? You know, and really quite a lot of that is trying new things, seeing whether they work, seeing if they fail, making sure that it doesn't cost too much if they do fail, but making sure that you can move very quickly if it's a success. And I think, you know, that's a great thing for innovation across all kinds of companies, is to try things, see if they work. Don't invest too much in them, see if they work, and if they are beginning to work, then jump on them and you know, really invest in those.
And if you were to give some advice to advertisers who look at radio and think, you know what, radio may not deliver the same ROI as if I were to, you know, move on to a digital platform per se, what would you tell them? Like, and you know, what's attractive about radio? What's still attractive about radio?
Well, I'd first question that assumption, because actually, you know, as we're seeing, there are a bunch of ROI pieces of research happening all over the world, where you can see, you know, tremendous figures. In the UK, every pound that you spend on the radio, you get £7.50 back in increased sales. The US has a similar figure. I think it's $13. In Australia, they've also looked at ROI there. But I would also say that, you know, radio doesn't work best if you just use radio and you don't use anything else. And nobody in this, you know, nobody on this panel would tell you to stop advertising on television, to stop advertising in the papers, and to focus everything on radio. Radio is really a tremendous multiplier of the other messages that you also have out there, you know, as well. And actually, if you were to take 20% of your TV budget, spend that on radio, then that 80% of the TV that you still have will actually work even better. Radio's problem, if you like, is that will be seen as television doing really well, maybe, and not necessarily as radio doing well, and that's something that we have to have a look at. But I think, you know, if you're looking at radio's place in the advertising marketplace, it's definitely, you know, a multiplier, and it definitely should be in that media mix, and that's a really important part.
Should we actually call radio something else besides radio? Because maybe of, you know, when people say radio, they only think about FM. They don't think about, you know, radio.
It's like the whole pretzel dog thing. Right? What the hell, dude? It's like, let's call radio something else. Stop calling it pretzel dog.
Maybe the problem is, you know, when we say radio, we immediately just think of that old box that we used to have, or the ones that it's in the car.
I have a real issue at the moment with there are lots of online websites and things. Whenever they write a story about radio, and I'm sure that you've seen this too, whenever they write a story about radio, then they put a really old radio because it looks pretty. But they put a really old picture of a radio on that story. You may have seen a slide earlier on today of a really old-looking radio that was partially held together with sellotape to show you how people are tuning into radio right now. And really, I think we do ourselves a bit of a disservice as an industry if we allow people to portray radio as being an old-fashioned medium, a fashion that used to be there. Radio is a shared connection, a human experience, and it's something which is on multiple platforms now, not just on an AM and FM receiver. But I love the word radio. And if we change radio to audio, then that means that we get things like, you know, Spotify, somebody else's collection of music randomized up. That's not what radio is all about. That's not what proper radio is all about. So I love the word radio.
Definitely. I'm pretty sure all of us here, that's why we are here. We love radio, and definitely we think the radio is here to stay. But not only the name.
But I sort of like agree with what you said. I think when people think about radio, then they think we can only do this much. Therefore, I allocate only this much of money for radio advertising. So earlier this year, I think on our side, Media Prima, we launched something called Radio Plus, just to sort of like remind everybody that you can plus a lot of things with radio, and not just radio per se. So hopefully that will help trigger for them to actually look at radio differently.
But audio is still a key when it comes to.
It's the only thing you can do while driving a car. Try watching a YouTube video when you drive a car. We will drop our listenership.
Don't try, just don't try.
We'll drop our listenership really quickly. I mean, it's the only thing you can do while you're doing something else. You know, and the amount of focus you can give while doing something else. It's not going to go anywhere. I mean, I agree. I mean, the radio component, I don't attach an whole thing to it. I don't think anyone should. 97.2% can't be wrong. And they're obviously doing it, so I don't see any sort of... I think if we attach anything to it, we should see what the future of it is. And I think today we had a good view of what that future is. The Radio Plus thing is a great way of saying that it's just not this. And I think everyone will say it's not just don't spend your money on radio. No one's asking you to do that. That's, you know, a media plan suicide by hedging all your bets, you know, or putting all your eggs in one basket. But at the same time, there's a lot of things to consider with radio that nothing else can do. That personal medium that radio is, nothing else. So when I drive home or when I drive to work and I listen to The Breakfast Grill, I feel that these two guys are grilling a CEO, and I'm the only other guy in the room hearing it, and I feel great. And that's not a thing you can feel with anything else. And I think that is what's most beautiful about it. But I think there's also a huge responsibility on the operators to evolve as quickly as possible. The partnership with Spotify, for example, is an example of embracing what a lot of radio operators saw as a threat. But we know now confidently that it's not just music people come to us for. It's the stuff between the songs that differentiate us from each other and differentiate us from other mediums.
I'm going to open it up to the floor for Q&A. Maybe we could sort of just to streamline maybe from my right-hand side, which is over this side, and then we can slowly move on. We've got a gentleman all the way at the back. If you could state your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Wan. I was from Surya FM last time. Now I'm a part-time announcer in Kim FM. First of all, I want to apologize my English because I'm from Kelantan. Okay. My question is, my concern is when radio is going to become digital. My understanding is it's going to be cheaper. I mean, everyone can on air or everyone can set up a radio station. So, as a radio station, a big company like you guys, Media Prima, Star or Astro, what is your preparation if one of your announcer, the popular one, the very influencing with so many followers in Instagram, million followers, decide to open a radio station also? How? What is your...
That is a very good question. Okay, so this is also happening in a lot of other industries. I mean, we see Airbnb, for example, disrupting the hotel booking industry. We see, whenever it moves to digital, Uber, Grab, whenever they move to the digital world, it disrupts the traditional business. How's radio going to survive when you go into the digital transformation? James was just saying how easy it is to set up a radio station.
It is actually, but yeah. I think firstly, if the talent who wants to leave the radio station and start their own radio station, even if they do it digitally or using just the suitcase to transmit, I mean, there's a lot of things that they need to take into consideration. Firstly, music rights. It's not cheap. Okay, and legally you need to pay for music rights. So let's say you choose not to do music rights and you do podcasts, which goes back to end of the day for me. I believe if a content is good, people will consume the content, and that podcast or serial is a fantastic example. So anybody can do content. YouTube is a great example of a lot of UGC in the market, but out of that billions of videos, only a few or fraction of it reaches that million or 100 million or billion. The rest, one view, which is your mother supporting you by watching the video. So it still goes back to content. And if any one of the talent from a radio station can go up and set up their own and delivers great audio content and becomes an extension of radio,
either one of us would hire them.
No, I'll be very proud. Actually, I'll be very proud because it's an extension about radio, and it just makes radio to continue to be stronger and bigger.
James?
I would just say I've lost count of the amount of radio announcers with big egos who think that they can do it better than their bosses, who go off and they run their own radio station for a short while, and then they realise how difficult it is. You can look in the UK, you can look in the US, in Canada, where people have tried running their own radio stations and they've lasted months, maybe 3-4 months, and they've burnt all of their money, and they all of a sudden realised that they're not quite as big as they thought they were. The radio station brand counts for something else as well. There's one exception, and that's in South Africa, where a radio announcer was fired from one of the big national radio stations there, launched his own channel called Cliff Central, and that did really well for a year and a half or so, really, really well. And the reason why it did well is less to do with him and more to do with some of the very clever deals that he ended up doing with people like WhatsApp and with other platforms to get past some of the data cost issues. But at the end of the day, all the figures that you saw from GFK earlier, there is a small amount of people tuning into online radio right now. The real bulk is still people tuning into FM radio. And FM radio is really where it'll be at for the next 5, maybe even 10 years' time.
All right. Any more questions? We've got a lady over here in the front. State your name and...
Hi, my name is Zai. I'm from MCMC. So just want to know your view. What's your view on the market readiness towards digital radio? digital radio in the context of DAB, in terms of owning or buying the DAB receivers? What's your view?
DAB, is it coming to Malaysia? Are we doing anything?
I think the government is planning to do so. I'm very glad that MCMC asked the question. Thank you very much. I think the industry is very ready only if we control the DAB+. Very good example would be Australia. The industry came together and they actually own the multiplex and spectrum, and that actually protected the interests of the industry. Because if you have a third player coming in and becoming a supplier, they're going to increase the cost of transmission and such. Hence, you will not have new players coming in because the point of entry is going to be much more higher. And then secondly, it's going to put all of us in the industry in a place where it's going to be very difficult for us to maintain a certain amount of costs. So, since you're from MCMC, we'll be very happy, all of us, the industry, be very happy if you could convey that global practice that people are doing. And I'm sure MCMC knows the challenges that you're facing with TV digital, having a third party. So let's not do that same thing, or I won't say it a mistake, but I think allow the industry to help dictate and grow that industry. And then also maybe new players can come in and make it more competitive, and end of the day, the ones that will benefit will be the consumers. Yeah.
Right, very good. Question, right.
Okay, greetings there to all the panels. And forgive me about my nervousness because it's very cold here. And this is something about, when radio are going digital and everything is just going there and people go personalized content. Like, in the future of radio, like when you guys go and recruit people, what's the changes of talent recruitment do you have in place? Because now everything is digitized, people want it personalized to the point that finding the right talent could be a bit of a hassle.
It's not just radio talent anymore these days, right?
Yeah. I think as an industry, I think there are two parts, or I would say three maybe, parts of or types of people that we find it very difficult to find. One is talent themselves, and it's not about digital actually. It's about, because talents are very unique and very scarce. You don't find many, like for instance, if we turn back time and we think about Fly Guy, there's only one Fly Guy. You cannot find the next Fly Guy. It's very unique. So in that sense, talents are very difficult to find. It's either you have it or you don't have it. Apart from that, the two other personalities that are very difficult to find in radio, I would say sales. I think it's the same.
About it, right?
It is just very difficult to find really good salespeople, and that, I agree with you, they need to be ready digitally. They need to understand how digital works because they need to be able to speak to clients and agencies on that particular style and such. And lastly, of course, tech. We need to always be ahead. So now that we are talking about data and such, to find data scientists is quite challenging because there's not many of them out there, and they actually ask for a very, they have a very high demand in terms of analyzing. So for me personally, that would be the three
I very much agree. A lot of what the industry is trying to do now, from CRM's level, doing this kind of engagement is one of it. Planet Radio, we've done that only fairly recently, where we try to engage young people to try and understand what this is. A lot of great talent that you know and love today have come from radio. Larry King and all these guys are all radio guys first, and then they came in. So trying to find that talent is very important. To Seelan's point, that whether you have it or not, it's a tough one. And I think any radio content guy you meet will tell you that it's not something you can advertise. Must be funny, must come into work on time. That it's not something you can
A lot of
easily
people
advertise.
think they are funny.
Yeah, a lot of people think they're funny. If your friends think you're funny, that's not what I'm talking about. 1.5 million people need to think you're funny. So it's a little bit different. So those things are hard to find. But what I am truly encouraged by is what people are doing now on these YouTubers. Like Seelan said, you can upload your view. If your mother supports you and you get 1 view, that's great. But if you're getting a little bit more people to support you, it makes talent acquisition easier for us. Yeah.
Any questions on this side? Anyone? Any marketers, advertisers who want to ask questions? Should I invest in radio? Should I still spend on radio? Now's the time to ask. We've got all three.
I wonder what the answer to that would be. I would also say, just in terms of talent, of course, podcasting is a great place to find new talent. YouTube is a great place to find new talent. The one thing that I keep on saying to people is be multi-skilled, know how to run a website, know how to write your own, know how to write stuff for a website, which is very different to writing it for radio. Learn as many possible skills as you possibly can, editing video and so on. All of that's hugely important. It says please wrap up, so I'm going to wrap up.
Yeah, so to wrap it up, very quickly, that this radio is here to stay and will be for a very long time because content will never go away. That's right. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause.
Thank you to all the panelists. You are asked to stay on stage because we're going to take a group photograph, but it's going to be the other way. So you've got your back against the audience, and then the audience is supposed to be very happy and cheerful. And yeah, Wi-Fi. Oh, sorry. Okay, come down, sorry. They'll do one first. And I'd like to encourage all of you to stand up and sort of just come closer, fill the gap here, whatever, so it's going to be nice and cozy. Photo. Colleagues can stand.